Thank you. It feels like I was sitting right there with you with Michael Bolton, When a Man Loves a Woman, and Michael Thompson. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here today.
Oh, this is my pleasure.
This is a life-changing moment for me. Like I can't tell you how many times I've listened to that guitar part. I've played that guitar part, fantasized that I was you. And so getting to be here and hear it, it's pretty surreal, I have to say.
Yeah. And it was surreal in a lot of ways for me back then, because I was coming out of not obscurity, because people knew me around town. You know, I worked my way up and every year kind of got better. But I tell people that it basically, you know, took the 80s to break in, to become in that very small circle of the cats, you know. Yeah. And this session was important because I got a call sort of out of the blue. I had been recommended to this woman from New York who was producing the record, named Susan Hamilton, who had a big jingle company in New York. So she was new to LA. She was coming out here to do that session. And like I said, someone recommended me, but on the phone, she was sort of like sounding me out and wanting me to sell myself and stuff, you know, because I didn't say, well, hey, man, I played on this, that, you know. And so she was a little, it's funny because she ended up being someone I worked with quite a bit while she lived in LA. And, but when I showed up at the session, I had worked with Jeff Porcaro, who was the drummer on the session, like a couple of times before this. And so it was cool that I knew him already, just barely. I think we had done like two things together. And we kind of like bonded over that. It's hard to believe, but she put him through grief too on the phone.
Right.
He's like, yeah, what's up with that woman, man? You know, like, yeah, she was like questioning like what I had done and stuff like that. And I'm like, no way, man, you're a rock star. You know, so we had this whole bonding thing. And, you know, hopefully everyone's laughing about it now and stuff. But so we had that thing. And then Michael, who ended up becoming, I mean, if the artists you work with could ever be, I mean, a lot of people say, oh yeah, he's my buddy, he's my friend, but we actually did end up working together enough that, and then his last few albums, we did just the two of us in this little room. And it's funny because he's a year older than me. He grew up right across the Long Island Sound in Connecticut from the town I grew up in, Port Washington, Long Island. And he was in rock bands, and then he became a superstar. So other than the superstar part, we were very similar. And so he was a little superstar-y, even though that was sort of towards the beginning of his career. He had that huge album before
Soul
this.
Provider.
Yeah. And so he was a little, didn't come out and hang with the band and stuff. And he was in the control room, and then he went in a vocal booth while we were recording. And so I had the dual, like, just totally excitement blown away thing of like seeing Jeff Porcaro right there set up just 15 feet away from me in the room.
Live. You guys
live. And then Michael singing live, you know, and you get like, so that's what inspired whatever I played on that, you know. And then, you know, In the early 2000s, I did two Motown albums with Michael McDonald.
Yep.
That were all like nice arrangements of all those Motown songs, and it's just a lot of fun to do songs that are so embedded in your DNA that, you know.
Yeah, well, this one was certainly one of the biggest songs of the 90s, even though it was a cover of the Percy Sledge tune. I mean, that had tremendous airplay. I mean, even today, but it was like a 10-year span where that was still on the radio every day.
And I remember running into Bolton after this was a hit, and like at the record plant, we cut this at the record plant, and I was there a lot working, and I was there working with someone else, and I saw him, and I said, "Man, that tune's done all right." And he said, "I never underestimate radio." And he was always so serious. I never underestimate, because they weren't planning to make it the first single or a single, but I guess some DJs or a DJ started playing it, and it took off, you know. And
did you think it was going to be a hit when you were playing it? Like, did you feel
felt great and sounded great, but like you never know. A couple of these tunes, I walked in and heard it and went, "There's no way this isn't a hit," you know.
Right.
But yeah, it felt good, but like, who knew?
Yeah.
And I think he, you know, like I said, he wasn't planning on it being the first single, but he never underestimates radio.
That's right. Well,
which is a good thing to follow if you're an artist wondering what you should release, you know.
Especially back then in 90,
when
91.
It even mattered, when there were labels and budgets and radio stations were, you know, caring about that stuff. But
now this was the guitar that you used on that song, right? So I know that when we had talked before we started filming, you had said that it had gone through some iterations over time, but if you could sort of take us back, what was this guitar outfitted with at the time that would have been recorded?
This started at this started out on the wall of this place called Performance Guitars, which, you know, when I came out here in '79, there was Valley Arts and this place Performance in Hollywood, and there may have been some other little small places, but that was kind of it, you know. Before there were a lot of custom guitar places, there were you know, that was a place. I remember I met I think I met Tim Pierce there, right? It was a little bit of a hang, like guys going to check out guitars and stuff, but I remember I had this friend, Danny Jacob, good guitar player, and he was there, and he said, "Man, you should check out this guitar." And it was this body with Strat pickups, but like a rosewood neck, right? Okay. And so I ended up buying it, and this neck was on this other like weird shaped. My friend called it the Carl's Jr. guitar because it was yellow and it looked like the star. Yeah. But it sounded really good, and it was a totally goofy shape, and I ended up selling the shape and, you know, the body and stuff. But the neck went on this. And then I had these Seymour Classic stacks and hit on this thing that, like, putting this Kaufman booster, and to this day, it's only been on 0. But running through the circuitry added this presency little crystal-y sound to the Stratty sound, which, you know, when you're going for that sound, you can never have enough of that. So that I've kept that in several of my guitars.
And that's just on the back tone knob there, and it's just adding volume as you would roll.
Yeah, it's like a... But it's always on. You know, so it's going through that, and it's not a mid boost, which Demeter made, but Kaufman was his partner. I don't even know how I got turned on to it, because he doesn't even advertise that he made.
But it's still made.
Yeah, friends of mine have gotten it and stuff.
Okay. And then master tone, master volume.
Yeah. But this, you know, had the Floyd, and how did it? So then I got that Grosh, and I started using that, and I had pretty much recreated the stuff, even though it never quite had the thing that this had. But then what did Greg? Yeah, Greg Bach did it. You know, filled this in, put the thing on, and because no one was using Floyd's anymore, and
Right.
all my other guitars were vintage. You know.
Yeah.
It's funny that like all those years of Strats going out of tune, all it would have taken was locking tuners.
Yeah. So now you have like Spurzels on it?
Yeah, this one.
Or they Goto or
no, these are Spurzels.
Spurzels,
and they work really good on this guitar. But that's all it takes. It takes. I remember I would always wait till like the last song, the last chord, and then go nuts on the whammy bar because the G would go way sharp and the low E would go sharp.
Yeah.
And I remember like playing this guy's Strat, and he had like, I guess he messed around with setting up guitars and stuff, and he had it like the nut cut so it stayed in tune with just stock everything. And I was like, how did you do that? You know, but I mean, the Floyd beat was a whole other thing. I knew I had to get one because Landau got one.
Yeah.
And he flew up to Floyd.
Yeah, I heard about that, and he slept like on his couch.
While he did it. I was so poor, man. I remember it was like $300 back then. So I waited a few years and stuff, but then I kind of like did all my clean stuff on this. And then I had this friend, a guy named Rich Thomas, make this guitar that had EMGs and a Floyd, and that was my rock axe, you know. So when it came time to play a solo or power chords or something, I picked that up.
Wow.
And I started like getting a few other guitars and stuff, but pretty much like in the 80s did, you know.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there thinking, God, I should really have a Les Paul for this part, and just like turning the tone down a little or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to have more guitars. And then my wife, once we weren't super poor anymore, she started buying me a guitar every Christmas.
Yeah.
Starting like 30 years ago. That's what most of these guitars are, you know?
Yeah. Beautiful.
And yeah, you gotta love a wife like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Michael, I want to fast forward a little bit to 1993 and another cover song, as it turns out, "The Power of Love."
Wow, was that a cover song?
Yeah.
Oh, right. It was.
Yeah, it was Jennifer Rush. Yeah. And of course, arrangement-wise, pretty dissimilar to what she did.
Yeah.
But this,
I never heard her version. It was.
I only listened to it as a consequence of this interview, you know, and doing the research about where that song came from.
Yeah.
And I listened to it and I was like, yeah, I mean, like, it was fine, but I think that certainly it made sense that this version had so much more popularity and radio play and is still, you know, probably the version that people would remember if they're prompted.
Right.
"The Power of Love."
Yeah.
Was this the first time that you worked with Celine Dion?
Yeah.
It was.
And it was cool because she and her husband were at the session, and she had already done her finished master vocals, which was really cool to play to.
Yeah.
With the backgrounds and everything. Usually there's a scratch vocal. And the cool thing was at the end of the session, which everyone was jazzed because I had done all these guitars on the song, and she really liked it, and her husband Renee was loving it and stuff too. And so Humberto Gatica, who was the engineer, he took like 20 minutes and did a mix, a really, really good mix with the guitars up and stuff. And that's the record that you hear.
Yeah.
And after that, after the session, David tried some bells and whistles and some other stuff that they didn't want that. They wanted that they took a DAT away from the session that Hum made them. And I remember Celine had told this story of like losing that DAT, and they were in a panic, you know. And then they found it, and that became the record. That was the mix, you know. And it kind of like showed me, because when you do a guitar overdub session, there's, you know, the guitar's up in the mix. and you're so used to that, then you hear when everything's been put in perspective,
Yeah.
and to hear it sound like it sounded at the session, like on the radio, was really great. I love that. That didn't happen a lot. In fact, a lot of these tunes, it's like, in the 60s and the 70s and stuff, there was more, definitely more like iconic guitar, starts the song, riff, bass thing. But like in the 90s, so much of the stuff that I was doing, I mean, you can't make a blanket statement, but for American pop music, it was more like fitting in with synths and being like a texture or like being part of the record, but not like upfront stuff.
Right. Yeah, you didn't get like a Just My Imagination or a My Girl sort of
No. So, that was a cool thing about, actually starting with a single note line.
Is this kind of the first big session you did with David Foster, or had you been working with him before this?
Power of Love. I had done the first time I worked with him, I had been recommended by this engineer that used to be his engineer in the 80s, a guy named Woody Woodruff, right? Who, my friend who I was working with a lot, this guy Bob Parr, wanted to try David Foster's engineer on the session, right? For this girl that he was producing. So Woody did the session and it was fun, and I did my overdub stuff. And like 3 days later, I get a call from him. He's up at David's in Malibu, and they need a guitar like that day, that afternoon. And it was a favor for Paul Anka, a demo favor for Paul Anka, who I've ended up working with for 30 years as not just a guy doing guitars, but like his arranger.
Okay.
I mean, it turned into a big thing, but not from that. Paul wasn't even there. But I remember driving up to Malibu thinking like, thinking about the records that David did, right? Chicago and Earth, Wind and Fire and this stuff. And I'm thinking, this guy will probably tell me every note that he wants, or worse yet, it'll be written out.
Yeah.
Like every note I'm going to play. Like, I didn't know, because his records were so arranged and so everything just fit perfectly that I figured, he had to be coming up with all that stuff. And so, but, I was in such a mindset of like, it did take so long to start getting recognized, and every little break was big, because I wasn't on the road. I was the guy that was like by the phone, and so many of the things that you could call a break were because I was available, and I had sort of, like I said, worked my way into like the engineer saying, "Oh, I worked with this guy the other night. It was pretty good," And so I went up there, and there were like there was an engineer and another guy and another guy. There was like 3 or 4 people in the studio, but David wasn't in the studio yet. He had his first place. The studio was separate from the main house.
Was this Chartmaker, or was this predated?
He called it Chartmaker, and then he called the next place Chartmaker, and the next place.
Okay.
But he came in like, "Hey man, I'm David Foster. What do you got? Kind of thing." And I don't really remember much, but I had this Strat, and I played a clean part, and I remember I played a nylon string part and stuff, and I thought I did pretty good, right? Yeah. And then I remember at the end of the session, he said, "Hey, I got to do a demo for this young girl in Canada named Celine. Would you want to do that?" And then he never called me for that, whatever that demo was. And then like a year went by, and David thought that he would try being like a movie composer, right? And he did this movie called One Good Cop. It was like Michael Keaton, and it was like a whatever. But he hated, being a movie composer and working with a director and all that stuff. So he tried it for that one movie, but I got a call to play on a session that they threw together for like a cue for that movie or something, right? So that was the second time that, so I'm like a little bit familiar, you know, but no records yet, haven't done a thing. And it's funny because I thought he was like all through the 80s cranking, but according to him, from like after Chicago and before like Power of Love, those years, like he couldn't get arrested. He had gotten cold, you know, as a producer. And I think that also played into that I became part of the new sort of hit package thing, you know, and the first song was Power of Love.
Wow.
So the first real call, you know, where I got to come in and do my thing, was that tune, and because it wasn't just one little part, it was I got to do, you know, the first thing when I walked in, he said, "Do you have a bass with you?" You know, and I said, "No, but I have a baritone, right?" So I started out by doubling the bass through because he thought the synth bass needed a little more point to it or something. But and then
so it was this guitar though.
For the clean part, and then the crank thing, I had the EMG, the other one.
And what kind of amp was that?
That was like for most of the clean stuff I did. I was using the Slant 6V.
Okay,
that was right there.
Yeah, we'll get a shot of that.
It was my clean sound, and then I don't know what year it was that.
Well, it was 93 that song came out, so presumably before then.
Yeah. Oh, definitely up to there. What I was going to say was then the Egnator IE4 came out.
The module.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that kind of became that became my like rack preamp rig thing into a, you know, like a VHT.
And for the textural delay stuff, was that H3000 and
yeah, I had the H3000 by then, but the first thing I got was a TC2290. Remember, it was like the first thing I could put in a rack, you know, and then I got a couple of other little things. I think I had like a some other time, I don't know, I had some other delay or something and a couple of little things, but the TC gave me like a rack fit, you know, and it was a good sounding delay, but it was like just a mono delay, but I had the panning thing and I thought that was great and stuff. But no, I used to have to, you know, before that I would have to ask the engineer to put a delay on me and stuff, and I used to say I was so poor I had to play my own delays.
That's a good one, actually.
Yeah. But yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear you play a little bit of it if you're so
yeah.
The whispers in the morning of lovers sleep and tight are rolling by like thunder now as I look in your eyes. I hold on to your body and feel each move you make. Your voice is warm and tender, love that I could not forsake, 'cause I'm your lady and you are my man. Whenever you reach for me,
We will get right back to the interview, but first I'd like to talk to you about one of the sponsors that makes these interviews possible. It's our friends over at Sweetwater and their amazing program, the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. It's a platform where you can buy and sell used gear with your peers, and the amazing thing about it is you don't have to pay any seller fees as you ordinarily would with most other platforms, so long as you decide to put your earnings onto a Sweetwater gift card. And if you're somebody like me that's constantly buying and selling gear, it's a great way to basically create your own layaway program by way of these gift cards to accrue money and savings and then redeem them on the gear that you actually want. I've already purchased 2 guitars this way using the Sweetwater Gear Exchange, a 1961 Fender Stratocaster Custom Shop Relic reissue, and a Gretsch Smoke Brian Setzer model. Absolutely amazing guitars that I fully funded by way of the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. I recommend that you create an account. You can do so for free, start buying, and start selling. Now back to the interview.
I want to transition into another great Celine Dion song.
Yeah.
Also with David Foster and with another writer that you've played on a tremendous amount of her songs, Diane Warren. I'm curious to know how this was different. This was also for a soundtrack for a Robert Redford, Michelle Pfeiffer movie.
Really?
That was called Up Close and Personal. It's about a reporter or a couple that.
Yeah, I just knew it as like her next single or whatever.
Well, I think it also came out obviously on her own album, but I think it was also sort of the track or the leading track that was, when soundtracks were still a thing.
Yeah,
that was kind of scored the entirety of the film, or kind of was at the crescendo of the romantic interplay of the two characters. But also has one of my favorite parts on it of any Michael Thompson piece, because I've always thought of the Boss Vibrato VB2. There's these trails that have that very obvious VB2 sound.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to hear how you incorporate it. I know it's there, but I've never actually witnessed.
Check it out.
But I'm wondering if you could tell me anything about that session, any of the gear that you might have used other than the vibrato.
Same stuff. That Strat, the H3000, which we've talked about before, but I use this one patch called Micro Pitch Shift that instead of it just being like a detune chorus kind of thing, I would change the, it's called P delay. I never knew whether that meant pitch delay or pre-delay or whatever, but I would change that to whatever the delay of the tune was, except it had to be 30 milliseconds less than that.
Okay, just because it wouldn't add up?
Because the wherever they were at with the DSP or something, then it couldn't handle, like you couldn't, if it was supposed to be 300 milliseconds, you had to put in 270.
Got it.
But that worked out perfectly.
Okay.
And like if it was 100 BPM, that'd be 300 and 600.
So there's like a latency compensation or something like that?
No, it wasn't late. I know that when the Eclipse came out, that had like 7 times as much power as the 3000, you could put in the exact amount and it would be right.
Okay.
And I just fell on that. But I remember I taught that to Tim Pierce. And he always credits me with because he had a 3000.
Right.
But I guess he didn't know why it wasn't working out, that it wasn't it. And we both, we didn't work together that many times, but we were both on this session together. And during a break, I went over and showed him, I got a minus 30 milliseconds from the thing. So that was a thing. And I had found my, I was looking for the Edge detune delay thing, which actually the 2290 didn't give you enough, like with modulation on full, it still didn't have that deep thing, which he was getting from the core, I guess, DD 3000 or whatever that was. But I was in search of, and so with the 3000, anyway, that's just a little aside, but I ended up using it in varying amounts on every single song I ever played on.
And that would have been the car amp as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
The H3000, the car, and and I would have one other delay that I had a PCM, whatever that was, delay for a while.
And compression wise,
I had different boxes. I had that stupid milk box for the longest time.
The DoD.
And compressors definitely just kept
revolving
trying.
door.
Yeah. But
do you have any sense of what might have been used on this? Was this during your milk box days?
I don't know.
So this would have been mid 90s, 96.
Yeah.
Is when it released.
It could have been. God, I just kept changing compressors. But
so mystery compressor, we'll say.
Yeah.
So Michael, if we could get you to play a little bit of that, I'd love to hear what you were doing.
Okay, I'll try to bring it back from the depths of the vault.
1996.
What was I thinking?
That you made right for every dream you made come true, for all the love I found in you. I'll be forever thankful, baby. You're the one who held me up, never let me fall. You're the one who saw me through it all. You were my strength when I was weak. You were my voice when I couldn't speak. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. You saw the best there was in me, lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith 'cause you believe I'm everything I am because you loved me. You gave me wings and made me fly. You touched my hand like you touched the sky. I lost my faith, you gave it back to me. You said no star was out of reach. You stood by me and I stood tall. I had your love, I had it all. I'm grateful for each day you gave me. Maybe I don't know that much, but I know this much is true. I was blessed because I was loved by you. You were my strength when I was weak. You were my voice when I couldn't speak. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. You saw the best there was in me, lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith 'cause you believed I'm everything I am because you loved me. You were always there for me. You tender wind that carried me. Light in the dark, shining clear into my life. You've been my inspiration through the lies you were true. My world is a better place because you were strength when I was weak. You were my strength when I couldn't speak. You saw the best there was in me. You believed I'm everything I am because you loved me. Because you loved me.
We will get right back to the interview with Michael Thompson, but before we do, I want to tell you about one of the sponsors that makes this video possible. It's our friends over at Eventide. And if you've been listening to some of these amazing tones from Michael Thompson, you know that the H3000 from Eventide, the classic rack unit, was responsible for a lot of the tones heard throughout all those hit records that Michael played on from the 80s, 90s to 2000s. And Eventide, in fact, makes a pedal that emulates the very sound of the H3000 called the Micro Pitch. And they are offering our viewers a special discount on all of their pedals in this series, including, again, the Micro Pitch, getting 15% off. Use the coupon code VERTEX15, and you can apply that not only to the Micro Pitch, but also to the Black Hole, the Tricera Ultra Tap, Riptide, H9, Mixing Link, and Factor pedals. Again, using the Vertex 15 discount code at checkout over on the link below. You're going to get those great classic 80s, 90s style chorus sounds that, again, you heard on all those great Michael Thompson hits, in addition to other guitar greats like Eddie Van Halen. Go ahead over to Eventide and check it out in the links below. Now back to the interview with Michael Thompson. So we got to hear it in completion. Because You Love Me, we got some Ebo on the Nick Huber style Les Paul with TV Jones and a
just
P90.
happens to be good for Ebo, that P90.
Do you know what guitar you actually used on the record for the Ebo stuff?
It would have been probably, I've always used a humbucker up front with the tone rolled all the way back. Yeah. So I'm not sure. It didn't work as well on Strats because you had that other pickup right there, and it could get kind of dodgy. But no, I'm not. Oh, it was probably my Les Paul. I had a Les Paul.
Okay.
I had a Honeyburst Les Paul.
All right.
That I ended up trading to Greg Bach. It's at his house. I can still get it. But no, I used that quite a bit. I forgot about that guitar.
Yeah.
It was like the color that Paul Reed Smith.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would have used that neck pickup for sure.
And was that Ebo thing something that you just came up with, or did Celine or David Foster ask for that?
There were certain things like the Ebo, the Moog, the baritone, the David. They were like go-to things that once we used them on a record, we'd get to the bridge of a song. He'd go, and he'd always call it the tenor instead of the baritone. Yeah. How about the tenor? I stopped correcting him, but and so I'd pull out so he did this thing where, this was pre-Pro Tools, but it wasn't analog tape. It was that Sony 3348, and David he was like a master of punching, and at the end of the session, he wanted to take my two tracks and push them up and have all the guitar info that he needed, as opposed to like putting that Ebo on another track and putting the baritone. Sometimes I would have a separate track for the baritone. And then obviously if I had an acoustic guitar thing, which every now and then I played acoustic. Most of the time Dean did them. But so, and he'd punch it around, and if it sounded goofy, I'd play it a little differently or something like that. But like, at the end of the song, you had everything he needs, and the B, you had everything you were going to hear on the radio.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Sometimes I'd be messing around here with like a new pedal that I got or something and go up to do a session with him, and he'd hear, like, I'd be trying the same sound I just had here, and sometimes he'd go, "We got to figure out where we can use that in this song," and then other times he'd say, "That's a really cool sound, but I'd never use it in this song." Like he would have a really good picture of, like, even though it might have been something he never heard before on the thing, he'd know whether he was feeling it for being in the tune. So
now that Leslie part that you told me before we started filming, it was a Korg G4, which is very popular. Was that something that you were like, okay, when we go into this section to like bring it up a notch, I'm going to go with the Leslie? Or?
Right. Well, you know how certain things like that, bring out that Leslie in your mind, I mean, from all those great Beatles and stuff like that. I just always associated that with that. And that Korg G4 was a really good one.
Yeah, it was really good.
The thing about it doesn't have true bypass and stuff. I mean, you could probably put a thing, and it was big and
Yeah.
stuff.
And
Actually,
it had unusual power too.
Yeah, it stopped working on me at one point, and I had to bring it to advanced.
Oh yeah.
Which was like the only game in town to fix stuff. But it was a Panasonic chip that was like $200, or that's what they charge. So I got it going again.
Yeah.
And then I got the vent, which is pretty good. But the Korg, like I said, I got it out and kind of A-B'd them, and it wasn't so different. And the vent's really good.
Yeah.
It's just, it's very, like when you hit it, you definitely know that it's on. It has like a boost too.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
Well, I adore that song. Thank you, Michael, so much for playing it. I think it's, as I said, I think it's one of my favorite songs of all time that you've played on, and you did it so much justice. It feels like I was here in the session with you, watching it happen. But another one of my favorites that you've played on that I'd like to transition into, and a producer I like to transition into, is the artist being Brandy, the producer being Babyface, and many of the tunes that you worked on with him were on the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack for the movie with Whitney Houston, among other talented actors. Great soundtrack.
It kind of, I remember that year at the Oscars, it got slated by something else, but it was such a good record, on top of the fact that the tunes really fit in the movie great, and the movie was really good.
Yeah.
But that was my introduction to the whole Babyface camp.
Yeah, so how did it work? How did you get introduced to Babyface?
The little story on that was I was recording at the record plant, and he was recording. He had it booked for like a couple of months doing the soundtrack. It was prior to him building his own studio called Brandon's Way, which was basically a copy of the record plant, but for his own personal stuff. He was down the hall recording that, and we were in the first room, and my speakers were like just through a doorway when you walk down the hall. Right. So you could hear and that was when I had like the stereo power amp. Yeah. So it was kicking up some volume. You could hear what I was playing out in the hall. Yeah. And so he's a great guitar player and stuff. And I think the first call to work with him was he just wanted to see what I was playing through. You know what I mean? I knew his engineer, a guy named Brad Gilderman, I'd worked with quite a bit. And so he came down to ours, and I was working with David on Celine's album, and it's like, that's pretty top right there. But I remember Nathan East stopped into our session like the day before and said, just stopped in to see us for a minute. And I said, who are you working with? And he said, I'm down the hall with Babyface. And I remember being so like envious of, because David and Babyface kind of owned the charts in the 90s, but he was that other guy that I wasn't working with, and I just thought, leave it to Nathan to be like working with, Babyface. And sure enough, like the next day, the engineer said, hey, Kenny would like to know if you'd want to play on a song for the, Waiting to Exhale. And so, and my gear was all there. They just wheeled it down the hall and they set me up. And the thing, anytime you work with a new producer, especially a big time guy like that, it's like, you want to come with your best stuff and show them what you can do, And the first tune that I played on was that "Count on Me."
Yeah, the Whitney Houston. With CeCe Winans. Yeah.
To my horror, they put it up and it sounded so complete and didn't sound like it needed guitar and didn't really have room for like a part. And so I'm thinking, oh man, this is my big chance to show Babyface how great I am and stuff. And all it was calling for was those little volume swells and little slidey things and stuff. And he was very shy, and I remember he stood over by the door and he seemed to be digging it, but he wasn't like, yeah, man, anything. He didn't say anything. And so I'm thinking, okay, they haven't pulled the plug out yet, but it was, just nice little polite stuff. And so he liked it and he said, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? I'd like you to play on this other tune. And that was the the Brandy one that we're going to do.
Yeah.
Sitting up in my room, and that started a very good relationship with him, and just kind of where he trusted what I was doing and stuff. And we did a DVD that was pretty popular.
MTV Unplugged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It started out, it was supposed to be an Unplugged, but it became, I think they called it like Back to the Club or something like that, because it wasn't really an Unplugged, you know. We were sitting down and stuff, and Nathan played like a
acoustic bass.
Yeah, acoustic electric bass. But so we rehearsed all like 30 days straight, like every day, just ran the set.
Yeah.
A great band, really good band. And when we were in New York shooting the actual show, he did an intro on everyone in the band, you know, and because we'd never talked about it or anything. He said, this next guy, I used to be trying to figure out what that sound was on these David Foster records that I was hearing. And he said, it's this guy. and I thought that meant, you know, a real lot to me. And you know, I had never really heard, I never really knew how I started working with him. I didn't hear that thing about, you know, him hearing me and wanting, you know, so anyway, and for the next like 4 or 5 years, he included me in a lot of his productions. And stuff.
You were on his record as well, like on Every Time I Close My Eyes, and you were on Change the World, you and Dean Parks, you know, and in addition to Eric Clapton, I guess only put the solo, the other in the film.
Yeah, there's like 4 guitar players. There's Kenny, me, Clapton, and Dean.
Yeah.
And we're all doing something that you can hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love to hear this song, Sitting Up in My Room by Brandy, who, of course, has become a very accomplished artist on her own. And you're using some wah-wah here, which is a little different than what we've heard. In that, can you just refresh our memory here? What was the wah of the moment for you during
It was the Buddha wah.
The purple wah.
The purple Buddha wah.
Pre-PV.
Yeah. That...
Everybody seemed to use that back then.
Yeah, I had a friend, Derek Snyder, who was managing West LA Music, which I went in a lot and bought a lot of stuff from, and he turned me onto it. And he turned me on to Buddha amps too, which I ended up getting the first amp.
Yeah, it was a boutique, definitely boutique at the time. I think they were made in Petaluma. I think later on not Mesa Boogie, but Dunlop started doing some manufacturing for them, and then I think I think Dave Friedman was involved in the design of some of the amps.
Yeah, I think so. I think that first amp I got was just the guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, Buddha. And just curiously enough, wah-wah has never been part of my thing. And so I've like purposely not even had one in my rig, and I have it like in a drawer. And if the part calls for a wah-wah part, I go and physically get it, plug it in, do the part, and put it back.
Well, this is a little bit of a tricky wah part, so I'm anxious to hear what you're going to do.
Okay, we can laugh at me later. Okay.
Seems like ever since the first day we met, there is no one else I think of more than you. Can't seem to forget, can't get you on my head. There's no verdict yet, I'm crazy over you. How can one begin? Tell me where to start. 'Cause every time you smile, I feel tremors in my heart. I have no one concern. What can I do with you till my day comes? Yeah, that's
And we will get right back to the interview. But before we do, I want to talk to you about buffers. Now, if you don't know, I am not just somebody who interviews these great musicians, but I actually make my living as a guitar pedal manufacturer. And one of the pedals that I'm extremely passionate about is called a buffer. And basically what it does is it ensures that even though you have all these different effects and pedals to get your signature sound, that you're not compromising the core element of just what the guitar and amp would be producing on their own. It ensures that even though you're running through all these different devices with long cables, that you're going to get the exact same sound as your guitar would be if it were plugged directly into the amplifier, despite running through all these different effects. I recommend that you check out our product called the Vertex Buffer Interface. And we have two different versions that are identical circuits. One that's designed to mount into our Vertex pedalboard systems, and another one that's just a standalone interface version that you can put on literally any pedal board that is out there with whatever type of Velcro or fastener that you want. Please do check them out over on our website, vertexeffects.com. I'll also link various dealers of this product, including our friends over at Sweetwater. Now back to the interview.
Sorry, I can't play a wah-wah without going... It's so goofy.
It's just
Maybe
it's
that's
part
why
of the
I don't-
guitar face, right? You just got to dip it.
Well, yeah, but it's attached right to the wah-wah, even when I play it out of rhythm.
Well, man, it's such a great song. I love the whole Sly Stone style intro
yeah.
part.
Yeah, at first I was thinking, is this too close? But it's perfect.
Yeah, I love the wah-wah part. It's really tricky to try to syncopate exactly what's kind of happening with those chords as they're transitioning.
Yeah, I know.
It's not as easy as it looks.
It isn't, and that, like, the walk up, the I don't know, the other day when I was trying to figure it out, I'm like, what is that chord, man? Because I thought it was like, but
Yeah.
it's, that kind of thing.
And do you think that was like something that Babyface notated, or do you think this was just kind of like the way you figured out how to
he
connect it?
programmed the whole tune and stuff. Man, when I heard that track come on, it was like so punchy, and his productions were just such great space in them, and then such punchy sounds.
Yeah.
He got into using once we did that DVD and he had the live band. He really loved the way Ricky Lawson played, who was the drummer for the thing.
Yeah.
So he started doing, tracks with real drums, like that Phil Collins, True Colors, and a bunch of other stuff, because Ricky could play like Babyface's drum programming, you know what I mean? But it was a real guy. So that was cool. But playing on his stuff, it just, I really admired how he put tracks together and how it sounded, man. It just was, I mean, for my own personal, like, putting tracks together and using drum machines and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like,
and that live album, for people that are not aware of what it is, it's there's some excerpts of it that exist on YouTube that go through some of the songs, but whoever, I mean, did Babyface MD the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was his gig, and
I know he said that he didn't have like a church-based upbringing, or like not that he wasn't raised religious. I don't know. I can't comment to that. But he said like his musical sensibilities weren't necessarily rooted in like gospel music.
Yeah.
But some of those transitions, like there's one section where it goes from like "I'll Make Love to You" from Boyz II Men, which he wrote. And then transitions into "End of the Road." And the whole thing is like
really gospel-y.
Yeah, it's very gospel, and it's an all-star band, really.
I know.
And I think Shanice was singing background vocals,
was singing, and
his brother.
His brother, two of them, Kevon, and they had a group called After Dark.
Milestone as well.
Yeah, Milestone. They had that thing, and another guy named Mark Nelson, and no, it was all-star.
Yeah,
I mean. And then he had a guy that was his MD, this guy, Bo Watson. Anyway, he was an idol of Kenny's. He was in Atlantic Star, one of those bands, and Kenny used to go see him play live. And so he made him the MD.
Yeah.
Great piano player, real churchy kind of thing.
So we've been able to speak a little bit about Michael Bolton, Celine Dion. We've gotten to go into the Brandy stuff and Babyface. I want to now change gears and go to the Michael Thompson band.
Ah, yay!
Many people may not know that you had a record deal with Geffen, and that you had your own band. Still do have your own band.
Yeah.
Occasionally, people can find you and your band playing around town.
Yeah, not that version of. I mean, that was the rock band thing.
Yeah.
That we put out the one album in '88, and it was a singer named Moon Calhoun and I, and just this year we reconnected and put out a new MTB album on Frontiers Records.
Okay,
that came out really good.
Yeah,
but we're both old men now, and back then we were like, back then we had an actual gigging band that was playing around town, and we were trying to get a record deal for a few years, like everyone else was,
right?
And it's like, what does it take to get that record deal, man? Yeah. Because you were dead in the water. I mean, now you can just put out your music, right. But then you needed that record deal in the sky, and they would always be signing, like when the Knack were big, like, find me 5 more Knacks, that kind of thing. When I came out here, New Wave was big, and then Quiet Riot came out, and it all went hair metal and stuff, and we were somewhere in between. It was like pop rock kind of stuff. But after doing that for a few years, we ended up getting this manager, a guy named Alan Niven, who had a band called Great White. They were then they were just a local band like we were and stuff, and when this guy Tom Zutaut at Geffen signed Guns N' Roses, the first thing he did was get rid of they had some lady managing them, some Sunset Strip, maybe it was their agent or something. I don't know who she was, but they got rid of her, and this guy Tom Zutaut made Alan Niven manager of Guns N' Roses. So he went from being just another guy around town to being the manager of the biggest new thing, right? Yeah. So that's how he was able to get us a record deal.
Wow.
And it was not only one, but 2 possibilities. Like, he was an English guy. And he was like, well, I've got 2 offers. Which would you prefer, Geffen or Atlantic? And it was like, all these years I've been trying to get a record deal, and now we're presented with two great labels and stuff, and of course Geffen, they were both super hip, but like Geffen was the hippest label, and so went with that, but unfortunately he also wanted to produce the record, which, I mean, he didn't get bad ideas and stuff, but he wasn't a record producer, you know, but the whole thing revolved around him, like, he kept sort of threatening to take the whole thing away if we didn't, because like, anyway, it came out. We were happy with how it came out and stuff, but we didn't want to continue. And like the whole thing at Geffen, Moon and I went by there a total of one time when our record, this next song we're going to do, Can't Miss, it was kind of a little rock hit. It was, #1 for 3 weeks on there used to be this R&R magazine, maybe there still is, but it was like rock radio stations around the country, and it was thrilling going to the newsstand and getting this, like, we were #1 for 3 weeks, but it was a riff I had, and I wrote it with a guy named Mark Spiro. He took my music and wrote a thing to it, so I figure we should do this.
Yeah, and before we get into the song, what kind of gear were you using at that time? Because this was in the late 80s, right?
It was. It was, I guess we recorded in 87. Okay. And, trying to find the right amp for all this rock stuff, I thought I had, I had my amp and stuff. And what ended up sounding the best was this white Marshall stack that my friend that made that EMG guitar, Rich Thomas, he had one. This great white, and that sort of like won out over the other amps. I remember we rented a Soldano SLO, from Andy Brower, and it was too overdrivey. I was looking for that Marshall. The thing is, like, people that are looking for a Marshall, just get a Marshall, kind of thing. But I ended up using that on quite a bit of it, and that EMG guitar.
So this would have been like a JMP, like 2203 or 2204, like the 100-watt super lead from the late 70s.
Yeah. And it was like a white stack, the whole thing, and it just looked so cool, but it sounded great. And so we used that, and then for clean stuff I used the Strat, the good old Strat. But
let's hear it.
We will get right back to the interview in just a moment, but I wanted to talk to you about our pedalboard building services through the Rig Doctor. Now, the Rig Doctor is the sister company of my company, Vertex Effects, and they offer various services that we just don't offer through Vertex, one of which is our pedalboard building services. And these are built by technicians with which I have personally trained and that will instill the same values in terms of tone and build quality that I would do as though I were building it myself. I oversee every rig build. I'm available to our technicians for questions and troubleshooting, and I can ensure that the quality of the product that you're going to receive when you get your pedalboard back after having been built by us will be 100% as good or better as anything that I would have done. We're using all premium soldered patch cables, all high quality audio grade materials throughout. We can use our Vertex pedalboard platform and buffers, or if you want to provide some of your own, there are options available for that as well. Head over to therigdr.com, check out our pedalboard building services, and get a quote today. Now back to the interview. Man, that's an incredible rhythm guitar part, though. I mean, it's burning.
It's hard to play.
It's quite a feat, I have to say. Well, as
you got to practice it. It's like,
I don't think people understand as a guitar player, and certainly nowhere on your level, just trying to keep everything syncopated with the right hand on that is work in itself, and then keeping any of the bending and those slides in tune.
Yeah. And it's like, when you're playing to a track and you don't have a click that you can make really loud, right? It's tricky too, because you want to be loud, but if you're too loud, it obliterates the tempo too much. Yeah.
Well, I'm very grateful that we got a chance to cover some of your music, and I hope that people will take the opportunity to check out more of that record.
Yeah, that record was reissued. I have like 4 records out on that Frontiers label. They're out of Italy, but they have worldwide distribution.
And we can find it on Spotify.
That new MTB album. And then I did another one about 4 or 5 years ago with a different singer, and one a few years before that with yet another singer, but they're all MTB.
Yeah.
And, there's some good stuff there.
Well, we'll make sure that that's linked in the description for people that want to check out your own band. We can do that. But I want to now move to another iconic artist that you worked with, the great Michael Jackson.
Okay.
And you played on 2 songs, or actually you may have even played on more than that, on his History record. Past, Present, and
Future. But the main
book.
2 were Earth Song and that They Don't Care About Us.
And the Earth Song was another David Foster.
Yeah,
too, right?
It was. And he had cut it like a bunch of times.
Yeah, tell us about like how this.
I don't know. I just know that like other, not guitar players, but other drummers and stuff played on it, and different versions he did. And then I think at the 11th hour he called David. I remember because I went up to David's for a session, and he said, "Man, check this out," and he played me the message from Michael. And it was kind of like a desperate, like, "David, you gotta help me," and stuff. And he didn't leave his phone number, and David didn't have it, and he said, "You got to get back to me right away." And he's like, "You didn't leave your number, man," but he obviously got in touch with him, and they flew all my stuff to New York, and I stayed at the Four Seasons. It was great, and he had like 4 or 5 studios in New York going, like mixing this tune and cutting this tune and doing, and so we were at Sony Studios, and Michael, this is the mic. Sorry. Michael wasn't there for the first, hour and a half or something. I was like, we were trying parts and stuff, and then he I was doing the EBO that actually never ended up getting heard on the intro, but David wanted to try it, Okay. So I had this up, and the studio was really dark because everyone knew that Michael wanted it really dark. I mean, really dark. And I look up and he's sitting like right next to me, like right close to me, and because I was looking down and I was doing this and stuff, and he had come in while I was doing that, and And he was right there, and he was really nice, and he was super fascinated with the EBO. And I was saying, well, I said, it's like a magnet thing, and I showed him how it worked. And he hung for about 20 minutes and moved on to the next studio, and that was our little hang thing. But I finished that tune, and I came back home, and I was home like an hour, and I get a call, like, can you come back to New York? And I think by then, like, my stuff was on its way back here to do this other song for Michael. You know, that just, you know, gives you some idea of the budget he was on. You know, he spent a lot of money doing these records and stuff.
And what was that other song?
The other song was They Don't Care About Us.
Yeah.
Which I'm so glad that I didn't, like, just go and try to play on it.
Yeah.
Because they ended up sending the tapes out here. And I did it with this guy, Michael Boddicker, famous synth guy and stuff, who had worked with Michael quite a bit on his records for sounds and stuff. And he had a studio and stuff. So I went over there and I recorded that whole thing, which they called the speed racer section, at half speed. So, and it was all written out. Not that I sight read it. We took, like, you know, 4 bars at a time or what. When I hear it now, I go, even at half speed, how did I do it? I mean, you know, it's very muted and stuff. It ends up sounding like, and there's like a synth doubling and stuff, but that's a guitar.
Wow. I always figured it was a synth.
Yeah. And, but the session, it took 6 hours to do this one thing. But I was going to just play the riff underneath it.
Yeah.
And it, you know, comes and goes. And it's like, you know, people don't realize the work that it takes to do, you know, just a little section like that.
All I wanna say is that they don't really care. Just don't wanna see it.
So we got to hear two amazing Michael Jackson songs that you played on Earth Song and They Don't Really Care About Us. Both of them, man, it's tricky at how fast you have to play that riff on They Don't Really Care About Us.
I liked it better at half speed.
So even that part you played at half speed on the original one? No, okay.
No, I had to, I played that real time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the other one. I don't even know that I would recognize it.
It's a lot of downstrokes.
Yeah. Keeping that syncopation right with the right and left hand to get them to talk to each other. Well, but also on Earth Song, I mean, I'm very familiar with the song. I remember watching it a lot on MTV when I was a kid. And I never put together like all of those beautiful like pads and all the like beautiful double stops and rhythm fills that you were doing there. Really,
they were little stuff. Thing about David is like, that's a perfect example of like those 4 licks that really stick out.
Yeah.
But you remember that you heard a guitar in it. It wasn't like so far back that you didn't hear it. But like, how he develops a tune is like that you wouldn't do that in the first verse, and in this case you wouldn't do it in the chorus. It waited till that spot and stuff. So,
well, in keeping with David Foster, in very likely this guitar, in all probability, I want to talk about a David Foster and Diane Warren dynamic duo again with Toni Braxton in the song "Unbreak My Heart."
Yeah.
Now, a lot of us are familiar with Dean Parks playing sort of that acoustic nylon part on it, which he's actually demonstrated in one of our other interviews with him. Yeah. But you were also playing some beautiful pads on this song.
I played the day before he came in, and I knew the second I heard that, by the first chorus, I just was in love with this song and thought, man, this is going to be a giant hit, you know. And Toni's like finished vocal was on there. And I remember I didn't know David had booked Dean for the next day, right? And I knew that it was really the star of this song was a nylon string, right? So, I wasn't, Dean or Ramon Stagnaro, but I ended up playing nylon on some stuff. I could get a vibe going, not like this, but with a pick and stuff. But he said, well, I've already got Dean booked for tomorrow, so forget doing the nylon string. And so I knew that was out. But there is an electric guitar part in this song. It's just, it's way back, and it's mixed, kind of where David wanted it and stuff.
In this guitar for sure?
Yeah.
In the car amp, or do you remember what you used?
Probably.
So, Michael, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit of that part that is a little bit more buried, but maybe we'll bring it forward in this case.
Yeah, right. Our mix.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come back and bring back the smile. Don't leave me out in the rain. Bring back the nights when I held you beside me. One break my heart. Say you love me again. Undo this hurt. Come walked out the door and walked out of my life. Uncle, these tears I cried so many, many nights. One break my heart. Oh baby, come back and say you love me. Unbreak my heart, sweet darling. Without you, I just can't
Oh my God.
Great
like-
song, great song.
Oh man, and you played it through effortlessly.
Oh.
Whole thing.
Hey, man.
One take,
You
just an assist on the tremolo. That's that's it.
get credit.
Hopefully it came in the right place.
Yeah.
Man, everything about that's beautiful. Was that pretty much like a straight through thing, or did you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
just
think it was okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like when you were doing it on the session,
Oh,
was it straight through?
yeah. Yeah, and I am playing those chords and stuff in the
Yeah.
verse, like back there,
Yeah,
and Dean's kind of above it.
Yeah.
So it's,
yeah. Well, it's great to be able to bring that forward because again, like some of that stuff gets a little bit buried in the mix, and now we can really see like
yeah.
because those are such beautiful
Yeah,
textures.
it'd
It's
be
that
fun.
classic Michael Thompson clean tone texture.
So everyone out there, demand a remix.
Dude, yeah, bring
On
the
all
guitar.
these songs,
10 dB up on the guitar.
Yeah, across the board. Cool.
So I want to do one last song for today, Michael, which is from the great Shania Twain, produced by Mutt Lange.
Yeah.
And you are in a rare group of guitar players that has gotten the blessing of Mutt Lange
Yeah.
as one of the greats. And man, he's worked with some great people. And the song we're going to talk about is the song Up. And it's the red version. There is a country, more country
Yeah, there
version
were
of-
actually 3 discs.
Yeah.
One was a wacky. He had these 2 Indian guys do like just weird like dance versions and stuff of tunes. But it was my dream. The working with David Foster was a dream, of
Yeah.
course. He's just amazing. But and Babyface. But my personal dream was
Mutt Lange.
to get a chance to work with Mutt Lange, and I really didn't think I would get to, because as a session player, he wasn't just another producer
Yeah.
that you might happen to work with.
Yeah.
He would. Yes, it was a very small club.
Yeah.
Dan Huff. I mean, there were the Def Leppard guys and the AC/DC guys and the band guys he worked with, but and then he started working with the Nashville
Yeah.
session musicians when he started producing Shania. But coming home and hitting my answering machine, the old school answering machine with the little mini cassette
Yeah.
on it, like, "Hi, Michael." My Rhodesian accent sucks, but "Hi, Michael. This is Mutt Lange. I wondered if you'd be interested in working with me on my wife's album."
Yeah. Yeah.
He said that, man,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Let me think." No, that was so great.
Yeah. I
Then
bet.
he said, like, same message. He said, "Of course, I've been aware of you for quite some time." And it's
Yeah.
like, how is this guy aware of me? I mean,
Yeah.
it was like you couldn't have bought a better, like rock and roll fantasy
Wow.
dream, So he was getting. They were towards the end of the. They were going into almost mixing, and he really wanted to get the stuff right away. And so I was going to Italy to do this guy Adriano Celentano's album for 10 days, and he was, in Switzerland.
Right.
He said, "Great, we'll come to you."
Yeah.
And they took the train with the drive and rented a studio. And I remember calling my wife the night before the session, and after, by that point, mean, that was like 2003. I had worked with everyone,
Yeah.
big artists, and I was actually, I was a little nervous because I was like, because they had booked me for the whole week.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, what if he doesn't dig me, you know? And like she said, man, what are you doing? You know, like, you know, kind of thing. And of course, like Dan said, you know, Dan did a great description of working with him and stuff. And I had the pleasure of Dan telling me about it and stuff too. And he finished by saying, yeah. And then one day I was, you know, on this part that I had been playing for like, you know, an hour or something. And he said, you know, we were good enough friends where he said, I turned to Mutt and just said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore or something, you know. And but he left that spot open for what Mutt calls the grease guy, right? I came in and there were all these guitars on the tracks, electric guitars, you know, and I always had suspected that he played on the stuff, but he never credited himself.
Yeah.
He credits himself with background vocals, but not guitars, you know.
Yeah.
So there were all these, you know, every tune had some meat and potatoes kind of basic parts done with like, I remember he had this Boss, because I had the same box. It was that something 100 or 1000 or something that had some good amp models and all their pedals and everything in the one space. And he had done everything with that, you know? Yeah. And he had one guitar, the St. Louis Music, like a Tele guitar, because I also had one of those too.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'd expect like he'd have all these guitars and amps and all this stuff. Yeah. No, the one guitar, the one direct thing, you know? And so, so anyway, they you know, came there and I met him and stuff. And like Dan was saying, we ended up spending a full, long 11 a.m. to 3 a.m. day on each tune.
Wow.
I mean, but also, like Dan said, it never was a drag. And he's such a nice, you know, gentlemanly guy and never getting edgy or like, hey man, you know, I got somewhere to be. No, it's just, let's try another one. Or actually, in my case, he would put Pro Tools in loop record, and you know, we'd have figured out like a verse part, right? And I would just play. You know, it would keep looping and recording me, and he would remember that like 11 times back you had a good bang, and like, you know, 14 times back you had a good chicka or something. And so he would sit there and make this comp of like the killer pass.
Wow.
And then he would take other stuff you did and make a double of it from that maybe it wasn't 5 minutes, maybe it was 3 minutes, but it felt like 5 minutes of just the one thing over and over again where you were throwing in little things and stuff. And but I had said to him, like, why don't you just do all the guitars on the thing? He said, I ain't got the grease like you, mate.
Yeah.
And that I saw that's what it was. He wants that out front guitar that's got the grease, which prior to me doing that album, you know, Dan had been the guy and did it great, you know.
So for the grease on this song, what was the guitar that you used?
Well, for Up, you know, I was hearing, I don't know if we were talking about the Birds or something, you know, Mr. Tambourine Man or something, but I was hearing the Ricky 12, My Bright Idea, and so that's what I did, and then I did a number of other parts, you know. But I'm gonna just try and get that one part going.
And do you remember what amp you might have used, or were you using?
Clean was all the car.
Okay,
you know. I remember for that trip, I took all my stuff. That was pretty much the go-to thing on the same settings it's on right now.
All right. Well, let's pull it out and let's have a listen.
Okay.
It's about as bad as it could be. Seems every
Michael, what a beautiful song, what a beautiful part. And of course, as you said, it's sort of reminiscent of those Birds jangly parts. It's really beautiful. It's all the open strings and beautiful arpeggios. I would expect nothing less from a Michael Thompson part. Well. It's absolutely gorgeous. But I just want to end by thanking you for everything that you've done for music. I think you have defined the sound of a generation plus of pop music. Your guitar parts have just been completely peppered all over the Billboard's charts. You've had so many number ones, and it's certainly the music that was most ubiquitous in my childhood. And so every time I see
your parents listen to these songs.
My mom
you
always
told me
had it.
That they were always playing these songs. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
My mom listened to pop radio all day long, and
growing up, I loved pop. It's like everyone has their thing and stuff. But in the band, my brother and I had a band, and we rehearsed like 4 or 5 days a week in my parents' garage. Yeah. And you always did like, the hit songs, the R&B, rock, everything, pop, Yeah. So coming out here and playing on pop songs, I actually love nothing better than a good pop song. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Melodies and so it wasn't like, this avant-garde jazz is my real love. No. Yeah. I love, a good pop song.
Me too. And it's just an honor to be here sitting with you and getting to kind of relive these songs. And almost it's as if I'm in the session here with you and watching you do your thing. And I'm just so grateful for your time and your contribution. And everybody should be singing your praises. If you don't hear enough from one more person, thank you again for everything you've done, Michael.
Oh, man, you got
Thanks for being such a great friend. And
you've been a great friend to me. I thought I met you when you were 26.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just turned yesterday. I just turned 39.
Really?
So, yeah, you've known me a long time.
So it's been a while. Yep. Yeah. No, and thank you for these videos. I've been just poring over them and loving them. It's just it's a different take on the interviews that there's a ton of. You know, which those are great too, but the playing thing is a different.
Yeah, let's see you in your element. That's my sensibility on it, and I'm just so glad you agreed to do it.
In other words, what were you thinking when you played that?
Yeah, well, it's illuminating, and again, thank you, Michael, and hopefully, we'll get to do this at some point in the future, whether it's talking about more songs or getting to be here in your great studio. So thank you, and we'll see everybody next time.